Alrighty, so let's take a look at how we can achieve this parallax effect in Squarespace 7.1, where the images stay completely fixed in the background while the rest of the content scrolls over them. This result is different than what we get when we use the native parallax effect, because in this case, the images don't budge at all. While with the native option, they still move just slower than the rest of the content. So if this completely fixed setup is what you're trying to achieve, let me show you how that can be done just with CSS. We'll be using the background attachment property to basically pin the images in place. It's similar to how position fixed works, but without the overlapping issues. However, there is one thing you need to keep in mind when using this approach. The code is not going to work for images that are already uploaded to each of the sections. Instead, we're going to have to manually bring them in via CSS. And the reason for that is because the background attachment property works with background image and not image elements, which is what Squarespace uses for these backgrounds. I have a plugin that makes this manual process completely automatic so that you don't have to manually indicate which image goes onto which section. However, if you're looking to modify only a couple of sections across your client site, then this manual approach is probably going to be more than enough. All right, so with all of that out of the way, let's hop onto the backend so I can show you how I have everything set up so that we can start coding. So over here, I have my backend, and you can see how the effect is obviously not in place. If I scroll down, I get to see the native look or the native layout of these sections. Now, one thing I have is here for the two sections that I want to modify, I included an anchor link just to make them easier to target via CSS. Because like I said, we are going to have to manually set in the image or bring in the image via CSS for each of the sections that we want to modify. So if you want to avoid having to look for the data section ID, I highly recommend setting up anchor links for your sections first. So I have this one set up in here. This one is just called first section. And then all the way down here, I have another section, and this one is called second section. Now, apart from this, I also have these two images uploaded inside the custom files area. So here I have the first one for the first section and then the other one for the second section. So with that, we can go ahead and now jump into the code. I'm going to focus on the first section first, and I'm going to simply inspect to see where that image element is located. So I have my inspector tool window here. And then just looking through the different containers, which you may already be very familiar with, we have the content wrapper, which is holding the content of the section, and we have the section border container, which is the one that holds the background. So if I open this one up, I see here that I have a section background container. And then if I open this one up once more, I get to see the actual image element that I have uploaded to this section. So now that we know where things are, we can go ahead and start making our changes. So there are basically two things that we need to do here. The first one, we need to make that original image disappear. We're going to hide it from sight so that we can substitute it with our own that we are going to upload through the background image inside the CSS. And now that background image, we need to attach it to something that already exists on the page. So what I would suggest doing is attaching it to the section background container. So we're going to hide this, and then because we're going to have the background image applied here, we're pretty much going to keep the image in the same place it was before. It's just that it's loaded differently. So let's go ahead and start targeting our section. Like I said, I'm going to be hiding the image, so I'm going to add my image selector here first. There we go. And then because I don't want to target every single image on the site, I obviously need to narrow things down. So let's go ahead and do that by adding our section background container selector. So again, that one is just coming from this direct parent container that is holding my image. And now, because I want to make the modification only to the first section, I'm going to be using that anchor link that I previously created inside my code. So let's go ahead and add that at the beginning of my selector, first section. So now I'm targeting the image located within the section background container, located within my first section. And once I have that there, I'm just going to set the opacity of the image to 0, and that is just going to make it disappear from my screen. Now let's go ahead and bring in our background image. So like I said, the background image is going to be attached to the section background container, or at least that's what I would recommend doing, but feel free to attach it to a different container to see if you get a different effect. So let's add that up in here. So I'm going to bring in my background image. I'm going to set up my URL, and then I'm just going to select the image that I want to use to replace the original one. Next, you can see how the image is actually really big for this section. So let's make a couple of adjustments. First, I'm going to set the background position of the image to center because I want the center of the image to sit in the middle of the container. And then I'm going to set here background repeat, no repeat. Then we're going to be using background size and setting this to cover. So once we have that there, we pretty much have the same result that we had in the beginning. It's just that now we're loading the image differently. And so for the magic trick, we're going to go all the way up here and set up the background attachment property, and we're going to set this one to fixed. And once we have that there, you're going to see that if I scroll down the window, now I have that image completely pinned in place and all of the content just scrolls right over it. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for the second section. I'm going to scroll all the way down to see it. And now I'm going to pretty much do the same thing. So I'm just going to copy that same code, set it down here, and I'm going to simply replace my anchor link with the corresponding one for the section, which in my case is second section. Now, let me show you something really cool here, which I'm actually considering making a tutorial on this, so stay tuned for that. But basically here, if I keep using the same image, I'm going to create a really cool effect. So up here, I have this image that has been set for this first section. But then because this image is pinned and the other image is pinned, which is the same image that I'm using at the top, but just set up a second time, then if I scroll all the way down, it's going to look like this is actually a cutoff inside the page and it's showing me the image at the top, even though this is simply a repeated version of that image. I don't know if that explanation made sense, but hopefully it looks really cool on your screen as well. So anyway, we're going to substitute this image because this is not the effect that I'm going for right now. And I'm just going to set up the second one here with my coffee cup. And then once I have that there, you can see that if I scroll up or down, that image just completely stays put. And then here at the top, I have my other image. Now, one quick tip that I want to give you is that if you're going to be doing this manual approach on multiple sections across the site, I highly recommend trying to condense your code as much as possible just to avoid repetition when it's not really necessary. So here, if I wanted to condense these two snippets, what I can do is just create one group version for both selectors where I'm targeting the declarations that they both have in common. So what that looks like is having the first selector here and then having the second selector here. I'm grouping them and separating them with a comma. So that means that any code that I put in here is going to apply to this container and also to this container. So once I have that there, I can go ahead and just grab those declarations that they both have in common. So that one of background attachment fixed and this one of background position, background repeat, and background size. And because I have those there, I can go ahead and just delete them from these snippets. And now I pretty much have less code written inside my custom CSS window. We can also organize this a little bit more. This is just something that I like to do. So here I have this at the top, setting the common declarations for both containers. So we have, again, attachment, position, repeat, and size. And then I only have this snippet for the first section, setting up a background image differently than the one that I have for the second section. I can actually take this one step further and I can nest in the image element because I want to target the image element for both of these containers as well. So here, if I add in the image element, I'm basically just wrapping that image element or that image selector within these two. So this is literally translating into what I already have in here. So first section, section background image, which is this one, and second section, section background image, which is this one. And now because I have the same declaration applied or the same property, I can go ahead and remove these. And once more, I just end up with less code than I had before. So if you want to use this condensed version, it's just a matter of keep grouping selectors based on the other sections that you want to modify. So here, I can go ahead and just add another comma and add another section container. So I don't know, let's call this one new section, section background. And now that third section is also going to get these modifications, including the one for the image element within it. And then it's just a matter of copying one of these other snippets down here and setting up the background image for that third section. Now, this is not necessary at all for this customization to work. You're still going to have everything functioning for both desktop and mobile, by the way. So here you can see that if you look into the mobile view, we still have that image completely pinned to the background, same as down here. So you don't really need to condense the code the way that I have it here, but just in case this is something that interests you or something that you want to apply to your projects, this is how you can do it. All right, and that's it. If you have any questions about this, go ahead and leave them down below. But for now, this is everything that I have for you today. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.